Teens love stories that make them think, even as they send shivers up their spines. But we don't want them focusing on the occult offerings of the secular fiction world, especially with the church's rich traditions about the supernatural connections between the living and the dead. Catholic author Antony Kolenc is here to tell us about a new anthology of Hallowtide Stories for teens. Stay with us.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Before we get started, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell to join our channel. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich, your host, and today we're talking with Antony Kolenc about Hallowtide Stories for teens. Antony Barone Kolenc, Tony, is the author of 7 novels for teens, including his latest release, Penny and the Stolen Chalice, and his teen historical fiction series, The Harwood Mysteries, which has won over 15 book awards. He's also a columnist for Practical Homeschooling magazine and the host of the Shepherd's Pie radio show and podcast. Tony retired as a lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Air Force Judge Advocate General's Corps after 21 years of military service. He currently teaches law at Ave Maria School of Law, and he speaks at writing, legal, and homeschool events. Tony and his family live in Florida, and you can find all these things about Tony at www.antonykolenc.com. And it's in the show notes, but it's ANTONYKOLENC.com. Tony, thanks for making time in your busy teaching schedule and all the speaking and writing that you do. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, thanks so much, Lisa. I always love coming on and speaking with you and talking about our writing for homeschoolers.
Oh, yeah. And you've been doing it a long time, and we appreciate you. You're one of the founding members of the Catholic Writers Guild. You're always giving of yourself there as a legal mind, as an author, as a prayer partner. So Tony Kolenc is really somebody out there, folks, who's done the homeschooling journey. He really knows the walk that we walk and takes the faith very seriously, as do his friends that we're going to talk about, too, today, that write for Catholic teens. But we've had the joy, and I'm going to put those episodes in the show notes, of talking with you about some of your award-winning Harwood mysteries, which are published by Loyola Press. So we know that you're super busy, and we're just so glad to have you. All right. So everybody, today we're talking about a new Catholic teen book anthology, and it's called Visible and Invisible, but this is a whole new one on Hallowtide. So just step us into what we mean by Hallowtide, Tony. Why is it important? What is it?
Yeah, so the Hallowtide is really referring to Halloween, as you might know it in the secular world, but traditionally Catholics would have called that All Hallows Eve, the night before All Saints' Day, which we all know is November 1st, a holy day of obligation, and then November 2nd, All Souls' Day. And so that is what we refer to as the Hallowtide, the Triduum. And my colleagues at CatholicTeenBooks.com decided when we were going to do our latest anthology, our short story anthology, and we wanted to pick a theme, as we always do, we decided, you know what, we haven't done anything around Halloween yet, and there's so much that we could say through these stories that the world is not letting, our youth know about.
Oh, yeah. They just don't get it at all. In fact, most Catholics don't even know that Halloween is a really, really precious, hallowed time of year. So tell us a little more about how the new short story anthology came about and why it's important to you and these other Catholic authors.
Sure. And probably the best way of doing that is just kind of giving a quick background on Catholic Teen Books. This organization has been around, CatholicTeenBooks.com, probably, it's got to be close to 10 years now. It was started by 2 actually Catholic homeschooling moms, Leslie Wall and Susan Peak, and they were authors in their own rights who were starting to write stories for teens, and they started getting people asking them questions like, well, why don't we just have one website where all these teen books can be there for Christian and Catholic families, homeschooling families? And that's kind of what gave Leslie and Susan the idea. So they started it. At this point, we have like 17 authors. We're all Catholic. We all write for the teen market, pretty much ages 10 and up, all the way, into college age. And we write in all different genres, all different publishers. Like you said, I have Loyola, I've got Our Sunday Visitor. We've also got authors who are writing with Pauline and Vinspire, some self-published, all different publishers. So we're not really tied to any publisher. Really, we're just a group of Catholic authors who wanted to get all of our books in one spot so that it'd be easy for families to have a great selection. And so from that kind of stemmed this idea of, well, wouldn't it be cool if the authors were to collaborate on some short story anthologies? And I am not one of the founders of Catholic Teen Books, actually, nor am I a founder of Catholic Writers Guild, although I appreciate being associated.
Oh my gosh, you came on so early though, and you poured your effort and your time into it. So I consider you a founder.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the main beneficiary because everything I've ever done in writing fiction has been because of the great blessings of the Catholic Writers Guild. But that's even what led me to Catholic Teen Books, and so I joined probably, I don't know, 2017 or 18, something like that. No, maybe closer to 20. But either way, I'm one of the Johnny-come-latelys. But we said, let's put these anthologies out. So Shadows, the one that we're talking about today, is our 5th short story anthology. And actually, if it's all right, let me share something real quick on the screen for anybody who can see it. I'm going to show you the 5 anthologies that are out there from Catholic Teen Books. The first one was Secrets, and that one basically was just themed around, every short story had a secret in it. Then you saw Gifts, which was sort of our Advent themed one. I was not part of either of those two. Those were before I came in. But the last 3, I've had a short story in each one of them. The third one was called Treasures, and that was really a St. Patrick themed anthology. It was a lot of fun because every author took a relic that we made up. It was a fake relic of St. Patrick, and they found a way to put it into their story somehow. And the story started all the way back with St. Patrick and went all the way into a dystopian future. So we have like all of, history covered basically since the 300s or whatever. So that was a fun one that's real popular around St. Patrick's Day. And then last anthology 2 years ago, we did a Lenten themed one called Ashes. And each of the stories sort of had a something that had to do with penance or Lent or, some of the church's themes that we really hit on during Lent. And so when it came time for our 5th anthology last year, we started talking. And again, I am not the brains of Catholic Teen Books. In fact, I'm the only guy in 17 of us. I'm the only male present. So I'm not the brains.
You're blessed among women.
Yeah, right. But it was a great idea. And they said, there's so much around Halloween that people, misassociate. The culture of death has gotten so popular and has pretty much co-opted Halloween. And there's traditions that go back, 1,000 years about All Hallows Eve. And then again, this idea of All Saints and All Souls, these things really coalesced together in the Middle Ages to form this Hallowtide Triduum. And so we said, let's each have anybody who's going to participate, because I think there's only 7 of us participating in this anthology. Sometimes we get 8, sometimes we get 10. So 7 of us authors wrote a story. So we've got 7 stories in here. None of them are related to each other, but they all have something to do with the Hallowtide Triduum.
Oh, wonderful. I love the covers too. For those of you watching on YouTube or those of you listening, and do check out our YouTube channel so you can see these. Oh, actually, just go to CatholicTeenBooks.com and you'll see the anthologies there. They're just beautiful. All right. Well, thank you for showing those to us, Tony. And say a little bit about what inspired you to contribute a story. I know you contributed to the previous 2, but what sparked your interest in this? And I know it's connecting back to your Harwood mysteries, but just say a little bit about what the spark was for you.
Yeah. So for me, obviously any chance I get to write is great. I love the idea because it's the only place that all of the authors of Catholic Teen Books collaborate together in one type of volume. Otherwise, we're all on our own doing our own thing. So when I saw that these existed, I of course was like, oh, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of everything. We even do, like, every Christmas we do sort of a what do we call it? It's a short story about Christmas that each author passes to the next. I can't remember what the name of it is, but we don't even know what the story is going to be like. We just write a section and then pass it along, and then we read it on Christmas Eve. So
that's wonderful.
that's fun. So there's all sorts of those kinds of things, but this is like, a chance to get a short story published in an anthology with people who I love and respect. So that was my first thought. My second thought was, as you know, the Harwood Mysteries, which is my medieval historical fiction series that you talked about from Loyola. I'm loving that. That's, the final book in that series. Book 6 is going to come out. If we have time, we could talk about that later. But it follows a male protagonist, Zan Alexander, in the Middle Ages, who gets orphaned and he's raised by these monks, and then he solves these spooky mysteries. But there's 2 girl characters that are with him, Lucy and Christina. And Lucy was there first. She's in our first book, Shadow in the Dark. So as I started writing the Harwood Mysteries, I said, I really want to do a series of short stories that just focus on Lucy and don't have Zan in them at all. Partly to give just more of Lucy's backstory. She's a much more complex character than you might recognize in the first book. And plus, I just wanted to have the chance to write, from a female protagonist, a young girl. She's 11, 12, 13 years old in these stories. So what I decided to do was, since I want to write a series of short stories, why not make my anthology short stories Lucy short stories? And so right now, I've got 4 Lucy short stories, and the first one is not in the anthology, but the other 3 are. And they all take place in between the different Harwood Mysteries books. And so I just wanted to, have that opportunity to put a spotlight on Lucy, and it kind of gave me the opportunity to do that with these anthologies.
Yeah, and you do that so well, Tony, really. I've heard many people complain about women writing men or men writing women and it not coming off. But not only do you write well from the thought processes and voice and concerns and even insecurities of young teens in your stories, and as they get older and all of that, you follow them so sympathetically. And so I feel accurately, they resonate with me as being very authentic. But the girl characters too, like I know you have children of your own and you've been able to see the world through their eyes, and it really does come through. I think being a parent just teaches you so much that nothing else can. Tell us a little bit about some of the other authors. You're saying so warmly what they mean to you and that strong connection between good Catholic authors and parents. Say a little bit more about the other authors.
Let me, maybe the best way to do this too is to kind of give you an example of what they're contributing to this anthology, Shadow. So, of course, Leslie Wall, who I already mentioned as one of our founders, her short story opens the anthology. It's called Grace and the Grave Robber. Leslie has got a bunch of books out there. I know you've interviewed her, I think, and she's won awards. And she also writes more contemporary mysteries for teens and lots of fun stuff. So she has one of her characters that she's using in one of her later series. And her story is great because it is sort of a cemetery, grave robbing story, if you will. And there is a spooky element to it. But she does a great job of opening this idea of the Hallowtide Triduum. And we learn through her story about something that honestly I'm a little embarrassed to say I didn't even know existed until I was part of this anthology. And it's called souling, which you may be familiar with, but apparently the tradition going way back, who knows, 800 years ago or something, was not to go trick-or-treating on the night before All Saints' Day, but in this season to actually go to somebody's house and offer to pray for someone who had died, for a soul in purgatory. And, they might give a prayer card or maybe there was a treat or something. So this souling and these soul cakes, this idea that you'd go somewhere, they'd give you a little soul cake, instead of saying trick or treat, you'd say, hey, can I pray for somebody in your family? And that's such a different concept than what we do when we just go, give me candy, which is what we're doing nowadays. So Leslie's story is great because she really, expounds on that, but it's also kind of a little bit of a creepy story. And so she's our first author. And then what's really cool is the final story in the book is by T.M. Gowett, who also has a lot of great stories out there that, again, you probably have, maybe even read some of her stuff. She's got several series, Kung Fu. She has like a Kung Fu series for teens, and for Eden's sake. She writes all sorts of great stories that really focus on modern teen issues. But in her story, the character is actually a soul in purgatory who's in a cemetery amongst other souls in purgatory. So it's sort of speculative fiction. But that's kind of neat because you learn about praying for souls in purgatory, and then TM's story kind of shows us the receiving end of that. Imagine if you were a soul in purgatory, and purgatory was you in a graveyard watching people come visit graves. That's sort of what her story does at the end. And so they're the bookends of Shadows, and they're both, two of our real anchor authors in Catholic teen books. And I could tell you about some of the other authors and stories, but let me pause just to see if that teased any other questions from you.
Yeah, well, we have had Ty Gowett on our show. Haven't talked to her for a while, but I love that she's also homeschooling mom and homesteading and doing all kinds of neat things. Like, these are people who are really planting a flag for the faith, for values, for protecting their children for what they need protection from, but challenging and strengthening their children with the right things, with the faith, with real living, with real kinds of wholesome challenges. And so I just want to say that out loud because it's important to understand for those listening. These are our people. These are the people that we spiritually labor with side by side. We're just going to take a short break now to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll come right back and hear a little bit more about some of the other authors and stories from Antony Kolenc, and we're talking about Hallowtide Stories for Teens. We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Walter Crawford.
And I'm Maureen Whitman.
We are the co-founders of homeschoolconnections.com and proud sponsors of the Homeschooling Saints podcast,
which is here to help you homeschool more joyfully, more easily, and more effectively.
We want to thank you for listening.
And we invite you to check out our courses at homeschoolconnections.com.
And now, back to our program.
All right, we're back with Antony Kolenc, and we're talking about Hallowtide Stories for Teens, but I think it's really important to say again, Tony, say again where we can find these great authors, because it really can be hard to know where to turn when our kids are asking really difficult questions and they need really good books to read. So just say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. CatholicTeenBooks.com. That is almost a one-stop shopping. If you've got a teen age 10 to college and you're like, I wish I could find a decent book, something they might be interested in. All 17 of us authors, we've got dystopian stories, we've got dinosaur stories, we've got science fiction, we've got romance, we've got historical fiction, medieval stories, adventures, saint stories, so much out there, contemporary high school drama stories. Whatever your kid's going through, there's a story or probably multiple books on our website for them. And we go to a lot of conferences and sell books and things. And parents often are asking, gosh, I wish I just knew a place. And this is that place. I mean, honestly, that's why Leslie and Susan started this, was so there would be that place. So get the word out, pass the word about CatholicTeenBooks.com, because there's so much good out there.
Yeah, good. Thank you for saying that. All right. So just give us a flyover of what else is inside those covers.
Yeah. So Carolyn Astfalk, one of our, actually a former president of the Catholic Writers Guild, writes a short story called Bogey in the Belfry. Carolyn has a great novel for teens about chastity called Rightfully Ours. That's a really good one to read for older teens, maybe 16 or so. Corinna Turner, who's our British component, and she writes lots of fun stuff, dystopian things. The I Am Margaret series is hers, but she has a whole series on basically a post-Jurassic Park dystopian world. And so her story is called A Very Jurassic Hallowtide. So it's basically a dinosaur story that takes place around All Souls Day. Then you've got My Lucy and the Forbidden Secret. Lucy's in the nunnery and has this secret that she thinks she's keeping for a friend, another novice. But she is shocked to find out what the secret actually is. Kind of a life-changing thing for her. And then Teresa Linden, another very prolific author who has a bunch of series out there that are very popular. and she has a West Brothers series, a lot of contemporary stuff for teens. She has a story there called Helpless, which is really neat. It gets into a girl who gets stuck in a graveyard, at night, and that she thinks is haunted, and she's trapped there. And then Marie Kaiser, one of our newest authors at Catholic Teen Books, she gives us a science fiction story called At the End of His Tether. And the tether she's talking about is actually a tether in space that you would use to have to survive in space. Because she actually is the author of our Heaven's Hunter series, which is a sci-fi series. So she has some of her characters from there. So you get a sci-fi Halloween, you get a dinosaur Halloween. You get everything in this series, and they're really neat stories too, and they all sort of resonate around, because it really the Hallowtide really is about death, purgatory, and eventually getting into heaven and praying for those who have passed before us, and the impact on our lives when people pass. So that's sort of your overview. This is a great gift for grandparents to give to their grandchildren, and vice versa. Not vice versa, and for parents to give to their teens right as they're heading into October, knowing that, what am I going to get these kids so they don't just think about, horror stories and Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that I appreciate so much the creativity and the variety. We talk a lot, because we're the Homeschooling Saints podcast, we often reference the unique and unrepeatable nature of our souls, right? Of our children, of the saints, of the different pathways to God. But I also want to touch on the fact that the church stimulates creativity and everything from science to art, has been a champion of all of those things from the get-go. There's just so much rich history there. Remember, I was an actress in New York City many years ago and a writer, and I was kind of burning out and hitting rock bottom, and I had a deep conversion experience. When I started to pray the rosary again, I started to have a notebook by my side at all times, because when I prayed to Our Lady, my creativity flowed. I almost couldn't stop the rush of downloads of just creative thoughts and ideas that would come to me in that relationship. So I just want to encourage people, you're getting into this jet stream of grace when you enter into the writings of devout, sacramentally driven Catholics. So I'm so appreciative of this rich history of art in the church and supporting it, and also drawing the graces that we have together as the body of Christ. So say a little bit about your hopes for the series. What do you look forward to?
For the anthology, we just want to reach as many teens for this particular anthology. But, because the other anthologies focus on other seasons of the year, we would hope that the whole anthology series would be consumed. And we just really want to steep our teens in the liturgical year, if you will, because really, honestly, writing about the Middle Ages, you realize that's how people lived their lives, was around the liturgical year. And that's really how we should be living our lives. And that's how our church calendar is set out for us. But for kids, it's often lost, and they don't have that connection to sort of, even be interested to try to figure out why this should be something they like. So these stories, I think, are our way of really drawing them in to that rich tradition you were just talking about, in a way that you can't do just in a CCD class, or just talking to them about the Bible or something. They really want to have their imagination stimulated through good storytelling, and all of our authors are very good storytellers, and so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and you can't beat a good story. There's a line in J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan where the Lost Boys ask Wendy to be their mother, and she says, "But I'm just a little girl." And they say, do you tell stories?" And she says, "Yes." And they said, "Then you're perfect." That speaks to all of us at any age. Stories are so powerful. Jesus told them all the time. He captivated people's hearts with stories. This is so important. It's much more so than we realize, I think. I think we'll know a lot more when we get to heaven about just how important it is. But let's get back to you, Tony, because I love your Harwood mysteries, and I think people really should check them out. And Loyola has got a page with curriculum companions for your books and all of that. So tell us about what's coming out. You mentioned it just briefly before. Tell us a little more about it.
Sure. And I can't praise Loyola enough for the things they put together. Not only do they have the great covers and maps, but that you have all this very educational things that they really put together. For me, I didn't put a lot of this together. Whether you're a book club, a homeschool group, whether you're doing a study on it, curriculum companion, like you say, word games, they got it all. So our mystery series is coming to a close, which is a bittersweet moment for me because I've been writing this series now for like 20 years. Even Loyola's just got the 6 of them coming out since 2020. But book 6, The Devil's Ransom, is going to be released December 3rd, just in time for Christmas. But we missed Halloween this time. Last year, book 5 came out in time for Halloween. But book 6 is a blockbuster. It is the series, it's the book that's going to tie up the entire series. And I've got Zan and the 2 girls I mentioned, Lucy and Christina, and others leaving historical England, which is where the other part of the series starts off. And we're heading into the Third Crusade, which is what every book has been building towards. There's 1188 essentially is where book 6 is going to end. It's on the eve of the Third Crusade. And what happens is, for reasons I won't spoil the storyline with, Zan and Lucy and Christina and others have to sail from the shores of, rainy England to what is Muslim controlled Portugal. Really south of Lisbon, on the way to the Crusades. And so they take a sea voyage. They wind up in the capital of this caliphate, where they have to solve the most scary mystery of the entire series, and where all of the loose ends of the series have to get tied up in book 6. So it was a lot of fun to write. I've been really excited for it to come out. I'm going to be really sad that, I've been writing every year a new Harwood Mysteries book. And I've got my Lucy mysteries. I'm going to pull them all together and put a Lucy anthology together. But after that, I'm Harwood Mystery out for now. And so it's a little sad too. But I think it'll be a great way to end the series. And I don't know that we'll talk again before Christmas, but definitely keep an eye out for that one. And I've got other things in the works after that, but not on the Harwood Mysteries.
Oh my goodness. And say again, what is the age range for the Harwood Mysteries?
It's ages 10 and up. It's really good for our 6th through 12th grade. And then for the younger middle graders, I should give some love to our Sunday visitor, because Penny and the Stolen Chalice is really great for maybe 2nd through 5th or 6th grade. And that one that came out in March of this year really focused. It was there for the the Eucharistic renewal. It's really a modern day mystery where 6th grade, Penny in a Catholic school has to figure out why somebody would steal the chalice off the altar while it still had the wine in it. So there's a lot of really great opportunities to learn about the Mass and the Eucharist, and in the context of this kind of shocking, Catholic school mystery. And the really exciting news on that front is I'm in talks with OSV to write a sequel to my Penny book too. So that would be my next project for kids. But that's great for the younger kids, especially 2nd through 5th grade. I'd say is the sweet spot for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So what would you like to leave us with? We've covered so much, and this is always such a rich conversation, Tony. Where would you like to leave our listeners for today?
Just, for parents, grandparents who worry about your kid. I have 5 kids, and I have 3 biological grandkids and 2 non-biological. I worry about them and their kids and what they're learning and what they're not learning. And I think, if you're one of those people, check out CatholicTeenBooks.com. You will be so happy with what you find there. These anthologies are great ways to sort of, jumpstart some reading because they're all short stories. But don't be discouraged. There's really good stuff out in the world that you can actually consume with your families. And this is the place for it. And just appreciate, Lisa, you allowing us to come on and talk about these things and to reach homeschoolers who are near and dear to my heart, and I know are exactly the kinds of people who would love to read these things.
Yeah. And right back at you, Tony, for everything that you do. You continue to serve. And everybody check out Tony's, I want to say, your Shepherd's Pie podcast too. We'll have the link. And I just noticed for the first time today, Tony, that you composed all the music and that someone with your last name did the artwork.
My son,
oh, it's
AJ,
your son.
is
Oh, I
the
thought it was
composer.
you.
Yeah, all those little intros
Oh.
and other music he composed because he's just awesome and very artistic. And then my youngest daughter, who also does my social media now, Amina, she's of course 22 basically. She is the one who does all the artwork, and so yeah, I'm very blessed. I worry about my kids, but they're very supportive about my art by giving contributions of their own art, and I couldn't do it without them for sure.
That's wonderful. I love it when families work together like that. It's exciting and it creates a great legacy and lots of great memories. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll have lots of relevant links in the show notes. Thanks for being with us. We're praying for you. Please pray for us too. Bye-bye now. And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.